I know your story in the slides, right? As you wrote this, in your journal.
You know,
real
story.
I want to get to but I want to get a little deeper than that. I mean, how long were you there before you realized an opportunity in all of this?
That whole week, it took me a long time to actually find what the business was going to be, because I was not going with any intention of starting a business. I just wanted to figure out how to help, and so I took a bunch of pictures, and while I was down there, I got a gig with The Guardian, and I sold them some photos. My favorite photo in Haiti is still the one that I got published in The Guardian, and it was just whatever. It wasn't a thing, but I decided I was going to sell the pictures. And the idea was I was going to raise some money and give the money away, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with it. But that whole week, every day, every single day, 6, 7, 8 stories of the craziest fucking stories. Sorry, Oscar, that you've ever heard.
Sorry.
The craziest story, the worst, craziest story that I ever heard, 6 times a day for 12 days.
Yeah.
And on the last day, I was rolling in the back of this truck. Ernsto would drive me around, and Ernsto was so cool because Ernsto would roll around in the worst neighborhoods in Haiti. The places we work in are the worst neighborhoods in the Western Hemisphere. They're really, really poor, and they're really, really dangerous. And so Ernsto would roll up through places in the middle of the night or whatever, and he'd get out of the truck, and he's this happy warrior guy. He's just the coolest. And he'd get out and he'd just start shaking hands, right? And I didn't know any better, so I'd be nice to meet you. So Ernsto taught me, it's so foundational now to who we are as an organization, both Thread and Team Toffee, the nonprofit, that we just decided that we were going to spend all of our time in the very poorest neighborhoods. And what we realized later was that other organizations actually didn't go to those neighborhoods. The UN, it's a red zone. They didn't spend any time there. So we were working in in neighborhoods that hadn't been touched by other NGOs or businesses. And on the last day, there was this kid that I met. He hopped into the back of the truck that I was in. Ernsto was driving him to his church, which at the time was just an old burnt-out gas station. And the kid had this huge tumor on his face, the size of a grapefruit. It was just growing out of the side of his face, and I didn't think anything of it. I thought at the first it was a birth defect, and later I found out that this kid had this tumor started growing. He was 12. Now he was 17, and that he was dying from it. And I asked why, and they said that it's because he just didn't have access to healthcare. He didn't have access to a regular checkup. So turns out his name was Toffee. And he, on the last day before I left, he sung at the church that we were at, and it was every emotion that I'd been holding back in Haiti for those 12 days kind of came pouring out. And so I got the chance to meet him afterwards, and then on my second trip down, I went back 2 weeks later, and he asked me for help. And he said, "Uka aide-moi," which is can you help me? And I said yeah, and at the time I had no fucking clue how I was going to help him. It was just yeah, all right. What do you say? No, yeah, of course I'm going to help you. So yeah, I came home and tried to figure out what he had, and that was kind of what kicked things off. I know we're still far away from Thread, but that's what kicked things off.
Yeah, where did that story go?
My friends and I back home in Pittsburgh, we called ourselves the team. So the team would hang out at this bar, the team would go do this thing or go to the movies or whatever. 5 or 6 of us. And so I got it in my head that I was definitely gonna help Toss. And so I found a doctor in Pittsburgh. In fact, it was crazy the way I found him. Took my slides up to this fancy schmancy country club in Pittsburgh, and I finished it, and I sat down at the bar, and I was at this point fairly PTSD. I was in a pretty terrible state, And the guy came up to me and he's like, so what do you need? And I was like, well, what I really need is like an ear, nose, and throat surgeon who can like operate on this guy's tumor. And I need a plastic surgeon to put him back together.
Is that a bar?
It was at a country club, this place, like at a bar at the country club. And he was like, well, my name's Jeb Blauger. And he's like, and I'm an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. So I was like, okay. So I went back to Haiti the next week with my dad. I got the chance to tell his mom that we were going to try to save his life.
Yeah.
And I took him to the U.S. Embassy, got him a refugee visa with some strings pulled, got him to the States. And like 2 weeks after that, he was living with me in my apartment with my roommate and my basset hound. And so begins like the craziest sitcom ever. So Toffee, we got him operated on. He lived with me for 13 weeks, and then we took him home to Haiti afterwards. And it was then that I realized that the entire experience was entirely selfish. That like I had helped Toffee because I wanted to make myself feel good, and like I wanted everybody to see how good I was. And like this whole exercise was a real exercise in vanity, and I was really disappointed in myself for that. So I decided that we were going to stick with Toffee until he didn't need us anymore. And like essentially, like Toffee, the neighborhood he's from, like Cité Soleil, it's a pretty shitty place. And when you're 16 in Cité Soleil, the chances are you're going to end up dead pretty violently, especially if you're a guy. So that begged the question, like, what does it mean for the poor not to need you anymore? And I spent like a year trying to figure that out. So I just kept going back and forth to Haiti, getting increasingly like messed up. Every time I was not dealing with Haiti well. Soon after we fixed Toffee, like I got dozens of people. This is a real downer. I'm sorry. Dozens of people started coming to me and saying like, "Fix my kid." Can you fix my kid? Can you fix my kid? And like I had like 10 tumors. One girl died. Like it was just a really crappy time. But like throughout that process, I was trying to figure out like, what does it mean for the poor not to need you anymore? And I kept asking people all the time. People I'd meet, like, what do you want? Like, what do you need? What does being poor mean? And I realized that people all wanted the same stuff. Like everybody wants the same things universally. And I know the guys and gals that work in Africa know this too. Like as soon as I realized that like being black and poor in another country is the same as being rich and white here, that there's the same thing, that we all want the exact same things, that unlocked the entire world for me. We all want a roof over our head and our kids to have a better life than we had. And so that's when I realized that like the end of Toffee not needing me anymore was like a decent job. Yeah. And then I started Team Toffee, which places the poorest of the poor into jobs in the worst neighborhoods we can find. But in Haiti, it's like 70% unemployment, and everybody was homeless, and there weren't any jobs to go around. Yeah. So I went back to my journal from the first time, and I decided that I was going to start a company because we needed to create some jobs.
Yeah. And when did you start Thread?
We were a project for a couple of years, but we had our 5th birthday this year. But the first like 2.5 years, like nobody on my team knew how to make fabric. None of us even had a background in textiles. But I was like, oh, we Googled it. Like we could figure this out.
But you did.
We did. We posed as graduate students. We got into a textile factory in Massachusetts, and they gave us a tour, and I was like, taking pictures and notes, and I was like, oh, we could do this in 6 months. And like 3 years later, we made our first bolt of fabric. But so now we set up the whole supply chain and got started.
Okay, so how many jobs have you created at Thread in Haiti right now? How many people are working
in Haiti? There's about 2,000 people that are earning income.
That's awesome, man. Awesome.